Peep the game, finesse accordingly. Let's get to it.
It's to die for.
Alright, so I bet I ain't been on here in like a month now. But YouTube actually banned me for my last video. The one about the pet Negroes. I was commenting on them. They were talking about their experiences in corporate America. I don't know if the original uploaders of that video, if they saw my video and flagged it, or if we got a pet Negro in our midst on this channel. I don't know what happened, but YouTube actually decided to strike me for that. And they've already given me a warning, because I posted a video a while back, a commentary video on this racist cartoon, 1940s and 1950s cartoon called Scrub Me Mama. You can search it up. And I was doing my thing, commenting on it, and they gave me a warning and told me to take it down. So now this time around, these niggas really strike me. I got a strike on this channel. But it is what it is. For those of you that have been on here long enough, as you can see, I've changed I've changed the name of the channel from TDF Mob to TDF Mob Podcast. This is gonna be a podcast channel. This is something that was on my mind, or that's been on my mind from the beginning. I always plan on taking this channel into that direction. So without further ado, let's get right to it. This is going to be the first episode of the TDF Mob Podcast. Or excuse me, the TDF Podcast. Episode 1. Now the title of this video, at least as of right now, is 4 Truths Kwame Brown Revealed About the So-Called Black Man. Okay? I'll say it again. 4 Truths Kwame Brown Revealed About the So-Called Black Man. As I see it. Let's get into it. On some TDF shit.
It's to die for.
Alright, truth number 1. It's never too late for a so-called black man to command/take his respect from society. I think that's the first truth when you look at the whole Kwame Brown situation. That's the first truth you can glean from it. It's never too late for any of us to command or take respect from society. So for those of us that feel like we're too far down in this society, whether that be in the workplace or school, our relationships, or just our journey through this life, the reality is we'll never get our respect until we decide to take it. Brothers gotta understand that respect isn't just earned. And most people aren't really willing to just give respect or allow a so-called black man to earn respect. We gotta take that shit. And when I think about the job I'm at right now, the situation I'm in, where I'm basically the only so-called black man in a tank full of Hispanic men, dealing with all the passive aggression, dealing with all the low-level, mediocre manipulation tactics, you know, I realize that the concept of just taking respect is very, very true. At least in my situation. And I know a lot of you can relate. You're in whatever situation, dealing with whatever BS, and you've realized that you're not gonna earn respect. You're not gonna earn respect playing their game. So you gotta literally snatch it. You gotta literally take it from them. It doesn't matter how you're viewed or what you're going through. You can always take respect. When you look at Kwame Brown and his situation, this man was publicly mocked for years. For years, he had to endure the NBA portraying him as a joke. He was the laughing stock. They labeled him a bust. A bust. That's probably the most disrespectful label any athlete, any professional athlete could ever be given. And that's what they labeled him as. But even with all that, still, he was able to virtually come out of nowhere and publicly take his respect. All he needed was an opportunity. Like, when I think about all that, it proves to me that the only thing stopping us, and when I say us, I'm talking us so-called black men, is the way we think about ourselves. It's not what others think of us that's stopping us. It's what we think about ourselves. In other words, our attitudes towards ourselves is what needs to change. If you even look at the scripture or the scriptures, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, that's the man. Now, the word heart, the Hebrew word that was actually used there, really means mind. So as a man thinketh in his mind, that's the man. So brothers, when we finally change our attitudes about ourselves, then we'll finally be able to get into some action. Now, for those of you that are new to the channel, you know what the action is all about on this channel. It's about peeping the game, finessing accordingly. In other words, TDF. Now that acronym, it stands for tireless, deft, finesse. These are three qualities, three characteristics that I believe every so-called black man, especially a so-called black man living in America, has to have. Period. You gotta be tireless, you gotta be deft, and you gotta have finesse. In other words, what? You gotta be able to peep the game, finesse accordingly. Alright, now the second truth that the Kwame Brown situation reveals to us is the power of a patient so-called black man. Any so-called black man that can exercise patience is dangerous. Period. Now, when you look at the quality of patience, the characteristic of patience in TDF, that really falls under the D, deft. See, when you're patient, you give yourself time to analyze a situation. You don't emotionally react. You don't give in. You don't give in to your emotions and react the way people want you to react when they're trying to provoke you, when they're trying to egg you on, right? And because you do that, you now have the ability to effectively plan, right? So your ability to effectively plan goes hand in hand with your patience. Patience is a sign of mastery. When you think about Kwame Brown and what he was going through, all the ridicule he was going through, he could have reacted to niggas years ago. See, the problem is, if he would have done that, he would have lost. He wouldn't have won. When you really read into the situation, they had made him the scapegoat of the team. when he was on the Wizards with MJ, a 40-something-year-old MJ. And MJ was not getting blamed for anything. So think about it. Everything that went wrong on that team, they blamed this guy, an 18-year-old kid. Then later on, the NBA went on to use him as the scapegoat for stopping high school students from going straight to the league. So he was a scapegoat on the team that he played for, and then he was a scapegoat for the NBA. They humiliated this man from the time he entered the league as a teenager. But patience allowed that man to stick to it, get the bag, and feed his family. So if you really think about it, as a so-called black man, even when Kwame Brown was labeled a quote-unquote bust, he was really winning. This brother was getting paid millions and millions of dollars to do a sport, or to play a sport that he was obviously good enough at to play it on a professional level. And he didn't let the pressure get to him and make him leave or make him detonate the situation by trying to go at MJ, trying to go at the Wizards, trying to go at the NBA. He was really patient. He was patient through all that. Which is why even all the way back then, he was winning. All right, now the third truth that Kwame Brown reveals about the so-called black man actually goes hand in hand with the second truth, that being patience. It's the power of a humble so-called black man. The power of humility for the so-called black man. When you think about it, humility was pretty much Kwame Brown's only option when he was going through that shit. And he exercised it flawlessly. Through all the trials and tribulations, the ridicule, the embarrassment, the humiliation, the degradation, publicly I might add, he was still able to retain his humility, or exercise humility. And like I just said, he exercised it flawlessly. That's why them niggas did not see his retaliation coming. Matt Barnes, Stephen A. Jackson, Stephen A. Smith, none of those guys. Nobody saw his retaliation coming. They didn't even comprehend that retaliation was an option in Kwame's mind. All because Kwame had them thinking that he was just a humble guy after all these years. They figured they could still bring his name up after all these years and clown him, even though he's a grown-ass man now. Them niggas were sadly mistaken. And because of that, they got checkmated. See, that's the power of humility. We can apply it to ourselves. Most people mistake it. They mistake humility for weakness. And then they let their guard down as they get real comfortable / disrespectful with you. And brothers, when that happens, at that point, if you know you're just exercising patience and you're just exercising humility, and you're in a dynamic where people have foolishly mistaken that for weakness, have let their guard down and are getting real comfortable, talking real slick, talking real disrespectful to you, at that point, the dynamic is all about, it's all about a matter of you deciding when you feel like checkmating them. And they'll never see it coming. They'll never see it coming. Now the last important truth that Kwame Brown revealed about the so-called black man. And this, I believe, is the most important truth. The most important truth, hands down. And I'm using this channel to try to just beat it in every so-called black man that ends up on this channel. I'm trying to beat this into y'all's heads. Even my own head, I'm trying to reinforce it. And that is the power of ownership for the so-called black man. See, when you really study this dynamic, Kwame Brown can't be fucked with because he's his own boss. He doesn't have a boss to report to. He doesn't have a boss that people can call up and tell him and snitch and tell the boss to hold him in check. There's no one holding him in check. There's no leash around his neck. The man Kwame Brown owns and runs multiple successful businesses. Can't nobody tell him shit. And when you really just, as a so-called black man, or when I, as a young so-called black man, when I really think about that, I see it, that phenomenon of how a black man that is his own boss in this day and age, in this country, is lethal. He'll destroy any and all opposition. Think about it. Stephen A. Smith for a while had to fall back. Stephen A. Jackson, Matt Barnes, they had to play like they were going to take the high road. Even Jamel Hill had to fuck off this man. Nobody can fuck with this man because he owns his own shit. He's a owner. He's a boss. He's self-made. And this is what they were labeling as a quote-unquote bust and trying to play games with. The black man that owns his own will destroy any and all opposition. Period. And that's something that, brothers, I believe we got to glean from this entire situation. We have to. When you look at the so-called black man, it's very obvious that we are the most dominant / powerful beings on this earth. And that the energy emitted by us will always overpower everyone else's. Always. That's why Kwame Brown was able to take this shit by storm, because not only was he who he was, that the former bust, quote unquote bust that had dealt with all this shit, but as he was attacking, he really went on the offensive. See, when you own your own and you don't have a boss, you don't have nobody telling you what to do and how to do it, when you can do it. You're not clocking in and clocking out. You work for yourself. You work for your family, pretty much. You work to put food on your table for your family. When you're in that position, at that point, you choose how you want to retaliate. You choose how aggressive you want to be, how far you want to take it. And this nigga took it all the way. They did not see it coming. They didn't even comprehend that this was an option, which goes to show you the difference between their reality and his reality. When you look at the reality of a Stephen A. Smith or a Matt Barnes or a Stephen A. Jackson, they're all slaves on the plantation. Now they might get more exposure, they might be getting paid, but they're still slaves. They're well-paid slaves. As your boy Chronicles of Judah would say, they're well-paid slaves. Kwame Brown, on the other hand, working for himself, doing for himself, providing for himself and his family. Now, how is a man in that situation gonna sit there and allow another grown-ass man to talk down on him publicly? Especially when that other grown-ass man isn't even the same type of man that you are, isn't even a boss, isn't even intellectually independent the way you are. Kwame had to get them. And he demolished all of them. He demolished every last one of them. On some TDF shit. So in conclusion, the 4 truths we can learn from the Kwame Brown situation are as follows. Number 1, it's never too late to snatch some respect. Whatever situation you're in, just always keep that in mind. So long as you peep the game and finesse accordingly, as long as you plot, as long as you exercise patience and humility, you can always maneuver yourself back into a position to snatch your respect. The second truth: patience is a lethal weapon for the so-called black man. People don't understand patience. They confuse patience with kindness, with being nice, a nice guy, with compassion. And no, patience is really a sign of mastery of your emotions. A very, very lethal weapon for the so-called black man. Number 3, humility. Humility is even more of a potent weapon for the so-called black man. And I can personally attest to this. Like, these Hispanic niggas in my job, I can see them low-key starting to give up. Like, trying to get me fired, trying to rile me up, trying to provoke me. Because I've been humble this entire time. I haven't given them nothing to work with. Not a damn thing. So now they gotta switch up their program a little bit, switch up their approach. All because I remained humble. Just like Kwame Brown all those years ago, I haven't even gone on the offensive yet. That's the power of humility. You'll have the enemy changing up his game plan because he can't figure out how to get you to react. And now the fourth and final truth, the most important truth in my opinion, is that once the so-called black man finesses his way into ownership, it's game over. Once the so-called black man finesses his way into ownership, it's game over. And I believe that's what our focus needs to be. And that's why this channel exists. The goal for every last one of us should be ownership. Own your craft, own what you do, own your property, own your intellectual property, own everything, nigga. Own everything. You know? That's why I encourage brothers to find their purpose and then create a vision to fulfill their purpose. Because it's only when you're living in your purpose, when you're actively working towards your vision and you're utilizing whatever gift you've decided to refine and cultivate to get you to your purpose. That's the only path to getting into ownership. So for those of y'all that keep up with the Kwame Brown videos, when you're watching his videos, man, my advice is don't just get entertained. Don't just watch it for a laugh. Don't just watch it because you're feeling down and you wanna smile a little bit, or you wanna hear what funny roast he's gonna say Look, there's nothing wrong with being entertained, but that shouldn't be the sole purpose or the sole thing that you get from these videos. When you're watching the videos, make sure that you.